Every mystery has a voice. Few dare to listen.
The difficulty with country houses, Lord Peter reflected, was that they possessed far too many rooms and far too many people who claimed never to have entered them. He made this observation at 9:30 on a wet Thursday morning, while standing beneath a stone archway at Belminster Hall and contemplating a corpse. The corpse itself was remarkably uninteresting. It belonged to Sir Julian Fane, aged 63, collector of medieval manuscripts, occasional pamphleteer, and, according to his housekeeper, a man who had never once been known to enjoy himself. He lay at the foot of the library staircase, dressed in a dinner jacket and black evening trousers. One arm had fallen beneath him, the other rested strangely across his chest, as though he had been interrupted halfway through a gesture of theatrical indignation. There was blood on the carpet. There was considerably less blood than one might have expected. Lord Peter noticed this at once. He noticed several other things as well. The library door stood open. The grandfather clock in the entrance hall had stopped at 11:11. Rain tapped steadily against the tall windows, and upon a narrow table beside the staircase stood the Guestbook. It was open to the page for Wednesday evening. Lord Peter glanced at it. Then he smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Ah," he murmured. Inspector Bellamy, who had been examining the body with the solemn concentration of a man determined to look intelligent in front of a corpse, turned. "What is it?" "Nothing." Bellamy frowned. "I wish you'd stop saying that. My dear Bellamy, if I announced every time I discovered something, we should have to spend the morning listening to me. You've only just arrived." "Exactly. One must establish standards." The inspector sighed. He had known Lord Peter long enough to understand that irritation was generally the first stage of being useful to him. "You've been told the circumstances?" "Only the entertaining portion. Sir Julian was found at 6:30 this morning by Mrs. Vale, the housekeeper. She says he had been in the library after dinner. At some point during the night he apparently came upstairs, collapsed and died." "Apparently?" "We don't know yet whether he came upstairs voluntarily." "Splendid." Bellamy looked at him. "Splendid? It's always reassuring when a dead man leaves several possibilities." Lord Peter bent over the body without touching it. The wound was small, a narrow puncture beneath the left ribs. There was something faintly metallic about the smell in the air. He looked toward the staircase, then toward the library, then, with inexplicable interest, toward the Guestbook. Who were the guests last night? Bellamy reached into his notebook. Sir Julian, naturally. Mrs. Fane, his wife, his widow now. How efficient death is. Also Mr. Ambrose Fane, Sir Julian's nephew. Miss Clara Wren, his secretary. Reverend Matthew Bell, Dr. Horace Pell, and Mrs. Agnes Vale, though she doesn't count as a guest. Everyone counts, not in the Guestbook. Lord Peter looked again at the open page. 6 names had been written there. Only 5 guests. He counted them twice. Then he looked up. "Bellamy." "Yes?" "Who is the 6th name?" The inspector glanced down. "That's Sir Julian." "No." Bellamy bent over the page. "Sir Julian Fane, Mrs. Fane, Ambrose Fane, Clara Wren, Reverend Bell, Dr. Pell. 6 names, 6 people. Yet the police had established that Mrs. Vale, the housekeeper, had been downstairs throughout the evening and had not attended dinner." Lord Peter tapped the page. "You said there were 5 guests." "There were." "Then why does the book contain 6 signatures?" Bellamy stared. For several seconds there was only the sound of rain. Then the inspector counted the names again. Perhaps Sir Julian signed himself in. Perhaps. He lived here. Precisely. That doesn't explain anything. Most interesting things don't. Lord Peter turned the page backward. The previous evening's entry was dated Tuesday. The page before that was Monday. He studied the handwriting. Then he reached for a magnifying glass from his pocket. Bellamy watched him. "What are you looking for?" "Nothing dramatic." "That generally means something dramatic." "I am looking for a name." "There are 6 names." "There were 6 names." Bellamy stared at him. Lord Peter carefully ran one gloved finger beneath the signatures. "Now there are 5. "What?" "The 6th has been removed." The inspector bent closer. At first he saw nothing. Then, under the lamplight, the faint rectangular impression became visible on the paper. An absence where a page had once held ink. Someone had written a name. Someone had waited for the ink to dry, and someone had later removed it. Not torn out, not crossed through, removed. Lord Peter closed the book. That's exceedingly rude. Bellamy looked at him. Rude, yes. Murder is generally considered rude, of course, but altering the guestbook afterwards suggests a certain lack of hospitality. The inspector's expression hardened. You think the missing name belongs to the murderer? Lord Peter's eyes moved toward the dead man. No. He looked back at the book. I think it belongs to someone who was never supposed to have been here. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley. From somewhere deep within Belminster Hall came the slow, hollow sound of a clock striking 11. Lord Peter checked his watch. It was 9:43. He smiled again. And now, he said softly, we have two mysteries. Bellamy waited. The dead man, said Lord Peter, and the clock. He slipped the guestbook beneath his arm. The clock, I suspect, is going to prove considerably more truthful. Bellamy followed him into the entrance hall, still looking at the guestbook as though it had personally offended him. Two mysteries, he repeated, the corpse and the clock. 3, if you include the missing guest. I thought that was the second. My dear fellow, you are thinking in police order. I am thinking in human order. Lord Peter placed the guestbook on the hall table and examined the grandfather clock. It was an imposing piece of furniture, dark oak with a brass pendulum and a face sufficiently ornate to suggest that its maker had been paid by the hour. The hands stood at 11 minutes past 11. Bellamy consulted his notebook. Mrs. Valley says the clock was working at 10:30. Did she hear it strike 11? No. Why not? She says she was in the kitchen. Doing what? Washing glasses. Were there enough glasses to require washing at that hour? Bellamy stared at him. Does it matter? Everything matters until we discover that it doesn't. The inspector made a note. Lord Peter opened the glass door of the clock. The pendulum was motionless. He touched it lightly. It swung once, twice, then stopped. Broken. No, said Lord Peter. How do you know? Because it isn't broken. Bellamy sighed. You know, one of these days I'm going to ask you a question and receive an ordinary answer. Then we shall both be disappointed. Lord Peter examined the brass weights, the mechanism, and finally the keyhole. There. What? Nothing. You've just said that, and it remains true. He shut the clock. Tell me about the library. Bellamy's expression changed. That was the room in which the police had found the first indication that Sir Julian's death had not been accidental. They entered through the tall oak door. The library was precisely the sort of room Lord Peter disliked on principle. There were too many books, too many chairs upholstered in dark leather, and an enormous fireplace containing a respectable quantity of ash despite the mildness of the evening. A reading lamp remained lit beside the desk. Several papers lay scattered across the blotter. A decanter of whiskey stood untouched. 2 glasses were on the table. One contained a small quantity of amber liquid. The other was empty. Lord Peter approached them. Who drank? Sir Julian, presumably. Presumably. Bellamy pointed toward the papers. These were found on the desk. Nothing seems disturbed. Nothing. Nothing obvious. An important distinction. Lord Peter picked up one sheet. It contained a list of names and figures. He read it carefully. Debts. Apparently. Sir Julian lent money, quite a lot of it. To whom? Mostly acquaintances. Ah. Lord Peter replaced the paper. Nothing makes murder more respectable than a properly maintained ledger. Bellamy frowned. 3 of these men owed him substantial sums. One threatened him last month. Name? Charles Harbury. Where is he? London, as far as we know. Convenient. His secretary confirms it. Even more convenient. Lord Peter wandered toward the fireplace. He looked at the grate, then at the carpet, then at the wall. His attention settled on a small brass bell mounted beside the fireplace. He pressed it. Somewhere beyond the room came a faint metallic ringing. Bellamy looked surprised. Servant's bell. Yes. Why? Lord Peter pressed it again. The bell sounded. Then he waited. Nothing happened. Interesting. You rang it twice. I noticed. The inspector folded his arms. You think the murderer used it? I think somebody used it. What difference does that make? About 20 minutes. Bellamy stared at him. Lord Peter walked toward the library door. Call Mrs. Vale. The housekeeper appeared within 3 minutes. She was a compact woman of 60, with iron-grey hair and the expression of someone who had spent 30 years discovering that other people were incapable of doing anything properly. She stopped just inside the doorway. Mr. Wimsey, Mrs. Vale. I've already told the inspector everything I know. Excellent. Then you won't mind telling me something you don't know. Her eyes narrowed. I don't understand. Neither do I. It is a shared experience. Bellamy turned away to hide a smile. Lord Peter indicated the bell. You rang this last night? No. Are you certain? Yes. Did anyone? No. Sir Julian? No. Mrs. Fane? No. Mr. Fondle? Ambrose? I don't believe so. Miss Wren? No. Reverend Bell? No. Dr. Pell? No. Lord Peter nodded. Very good. Mrs. Vale looked suspicious. What is it? Nothing at all. He turned to Bellamy. Ask her about the dinner. The inspector blinked. The dinner? Yes. Why? Because people lie much more convincingly about murder than they do about soup. Mrs. Vale's mouth tightened. What about dinner? Who sat where? She answered immediately. Sir Julian at the head. Mrs. Fane opposite him. Mr. Ambrose to his uncle's right. Miss Wren beside Mrs. Fane. Reverend Bell beside Mr. Ambrose. Dr. Pell at the far end. And yourself? In the kitchen. Who carried in the soup? I did. Who cleared it? I did. Did you enter the dining room after dinner? No. Until this morning. Interesting. Mrs. Vale looked at him coldly. Why? Because the Guestbook suggests otherwise. Her expression changed. Only slightly. But Lord Peter saw it. Bellamy saw it too. What do you mean? She asked. Lord Peter smiled pleasantly. Nothing yet. He walked past her and stopped in the doorway. Mrs. Vale, one more question. Yes? Who normally signs the Guestbook? The guests. Always? Yes. Even Sir Julian? She hesitated. Yes. Why? He insisted upon it. Did he? Yes. Curious. Lord Peter looked toward the staircase. Very curious indeed. Mrs. Vale left. Bellamy waited until her footsteps disappeared. You noticed that? Yes. She lied. Yes. About what? I haven't the faintest idea. Bellamy looked exasperated. Then how can you know she lied? Because she answered too quickly. That isn't proof. No, it's merely evidence. Lord Peter returned to the table. He examined the 2 whiskey glasses. Tell me something, Bellamy. What time did Dr. Pell estimate death? Between 11 and midnight. Based on? Temperature, rigidity, the usual things. Did he examine the body before moving it? Yes. Did he mention anything peculiar? Bellamy hesitated. He said there was a faint smell of bitter almonds. Lord Peter's expression became still. Ah, you know what that means? It means Dr. Pell has been reading detective stories. Bitter almonds? An old theatrical signal for poison. You don't think he was poisoned? No. Why not? Because the wound beneath his ribs is rather inconsiderate of poison. Bellamy looked toward the staircase. You think he was stabbed? I think someone wanted us to think he was stabbed. The inspector's face hardened. Then what killed him? Lord Peter did not answer. He returned to the Guestbook. Carefully he turned it over. The leather cover was damp along one edge. He touched it. Then he smelled his fingertip. Rainwater. No, he murmured. Bellamy watched him. What now? Now we find out who came in through the front door after dinner. We've already established that no one did. Lord Peter looked at him. Have we? He lifted the Guestbook. A faint crescent of mud marked the bottom corner of the leather cover. It was not country mud. It contained tiny grains of pale gravel. The same gravel covered the narrow path beneath the library windows. Lord Peter glanced toward the rain-streaked glass. Bellamy. Yes? Where does that path lead? To the old chapel. And beyond it? The east gate. How far? Half a mile. Excellent. Lord Peter picked up his hat. Let us go and see whether the missing guest walked in. Bellamy reached for his coat, and if he did, Lord Peter paused at the door. Then we shall have to discover why he was invited. He glanced once more at the Guestbook, and why someone was so anxious to make him disappear. The east gate stood at the end of a gravel drive which curved away from Belminster Hall and disappeared between two rows of dripping yews. Beyond it lay a narrow lane, a ruined chapel, and, according to the map Bellamy produced from his pocket, a footpath leading toward the village. Lord Peter walked slowly. He had the peculiar habit of moving more deliberately when he was thinking quickly. Bellamy, who had acquired the habit of watching him rather than the ground, nearly walked into him when Wimsey stopped beside the chapel wall. Here. The chapel was a miserable little building, grey with age and green with damp. Its roof had collapsed over the nave, but the eastern wall remained intact, and a rusted iron gate stood crookedly in the surrounding churchyard. Lord Peter looked at the mud. There were footprints. Bellamy crouched. Someone's been here, several someones, recently. Recently enough. There were two distinct sets. One consisted of the deep, broad impressions of a man's boots. The other was narrower and lighter. Bellamy followed the prints with his eyes. They come from the east gate and go toward the hall. Yes. Then we have learned something. What? That people can walk. Bellamy gave him a look. Lord Peter smiled. Forgive me, I couldn't resist. He knelt beside the smaller footprints. The mud had preserved them rather well. The heels were sharply marked, but the toes were unusually indistinct. Interesting. What? Nothing. Must you? Apparently. He took a small notebook from his pocket and sketched the impression. The person wearing these shoes was carrying something. How can you tell? The right foot is deeper than the left. Could be heavier footwear. No, the heel is deeper, not the entire sole. Bellamy looked again, and a parcel perhaps, or a bag. Could be anything, precisely. Lord Peter stood. The rain had begun to strengthen. A drop landed on the page of his notebook. He shut it. Let us return. Why? Because I want to ask Mrs. Vale a question. We've just questioned her. Yes. And? She lied. Bellamy stopped. You said that already. Yes, but now I know why. They had reached the hall when Lord Peter paused beneath the entrance arch. The grandfather clock still showed 11 minutes past 11. Bellamy glanced at it. Perhaps we ought to get a clockmaker. Eventually. I have not yet finished asking the clock questions. You're serious. Painfully. Lord Peter entered the library again. He went directly to the desk. The papers were precisely as they had been. He lifted the empty whiskey glass. Who found this? Mrs. Vale. Who found the body? Mrs. Vale. Who discovered the library door was open? Mrs. Vale. Bellamy stared at him. You think that's suspicious? I think it is efficient. She is the housekeeper. Exactly. Lord Peter put the glass down. People imagine servants are invisible. They aren't. They are simply accustomed to being ignored. He walked to the library window. The curtains were half drawn. He touched the fabric. It was damp. Bellamy noticed. Rain? No. Lord Peter rubbed the curtain between finger and thumb. Dew. On an indoor curtain. Bellamy moved closer. There was indeed a faint dampness along the lower edge. Lord Peter looked outside. The window was shut. Was this window opened? According to Mrs. Vale, no. According to everyone. Bellamy checked his notebook. Mrs. Fane says she doesn't know. Miss Wren says it was closed when she left the library. Reverend Bell says he never noticed it. Dr. Pell says the same. And Ambrose, he says it was shut. Ah. Bellamy raised an eyebrow. Why ah? Because everyone else says they don't know. So Mr. Ambrose knows. Bellamy understood. He specifically said it was shut. Exactly. Lord Peter opened the window. Cold air entered the room. Below, the gravel path glistened. There was a narrow ledge beneath the sill. A small object lay upon it. Lord Peter reached down. It was a fragment of black thread. He examined it. Clothing. Looks like it. Perhaps. He placed it carefully in an envelope. Bellamy watched him. You think someone came through this window? No. Then why the thread? Because someone came near it. Who? That is what we're going to find out. A movement in the doorway made them turn. A young woman stood there. She was pale, dark-haired, and dressed in a plain grey morning gown. Her face possessed the strained composure of someone who had slept badly and intended to deny it. "Mr. Wimsey." "Yes, I'm Clara Wren, Sir Julian's secretary." "Yes, come in." She hesitated, then entered. Lord Peter pulled out a chair. "Sit down." She did so. "You've already spoken to Inspector Bellamy." "Yes." "Were you in the library last night?" "Yes." "At what time?" "After dinner, until approximately 10:30. "What were you doing?" "Sorting Sir Julian's correspondence." "Alone?" "Yes." "Was Sir Julian there?" "For part of the time." "What part?" "Until about 10. Lord Peter nodded. "Did he seem well?" "Yes." "Angry?" "No." "Frightened?" She looked at him. "No." "Expecting someone?" Another hesitation. "No." Lord Peter leaned back. "Miss Wren, why are you lying?" Her face drained of color. Bellamy shifted forward. "I am not." "Yes, you are. I don't understand." "Of course you do." She looked toward the window. Lord Peter followed her gaze. "You saw someone outside." She said nothing. "You saw someone at the library window." Still nothing. "Was it the person who came through the east gate?" Her fingers tightened around one another. "I didn't see his face." "His?" She looked up. Lord Peter smiled faintly. "You've just told me something very useful." She realized her mistake. Bellamy leaned forward. "Miss Wren, who was outside?" "I don't know." "Did he speak to you?" "No." "Did Sir Julian know he was there?" "I don't know." "Why didn't you tell us?" Her lips trembled. "Because Sir Julian told me not to." Lord Peter's expression changed. That answer at least had the ring of truth. "When?" "Yesterday afternoon." "Why?" "He said someone might come to the hall who must not be allowed to speak with him." "Did he name the person?" "No." "Did he say why?" "No." "Did he appear afraid?" She lowered her eyes. "Yes." Bellamy glanced at Lord Peter. Lord Peter remained silent for several seconds. Then he asked quietly, "What else did Sir Julian say?" Miss Wren swallowed. "He told me that if anything happened to him I was to burn one particular letter." "Did you?" "No." "Where is it?" She looked toward the desk. "In his private study." Lord Peter rose. "Then we had better find it." They crossed the corridor to Sir Julian's study. Unlike the library, it was a small, severe room. There were no comfortable chairs, no decorative ornaments, and no books except those relating to Sir Julian's academic work. A locked writing desk stood against the far wall. Miss Wren approached it. "I don't have the key." Lord Peter examined the lock. "Neither does the murderer." Bellamy frowned. "What?" "The desk has been forced." The thin scratch marked the brass around the keyhole. Someone had tried to open it. Recently. Lord Peter looked at Miss Wren. "Who knew about the letter?" "Sir Julian and me." "Anyone else?" She hesitated. "I think Mrs. Fane knew." "Why?" "She and Sir Julian argued yesterday afternoon." "About the letter?" "I don't know." Lord Peter studied her face. "Miss Wren, did Mrs. Fane ask you whether Sir Julian had received a letter?" "Yes." "When?" "Yesterday evening." "What did you tell her?" "That I hadn't seen one." "Which was true?" "Yes." Lord Peter nodded. Then he looked at the desk again. "Where is the key?" "I don't know." "Sir Julian always carried it." "Yes." "Was it found on him?" "No." Bellamy's eyes widened. Lord Peter smiled. "And there, Bellamy, is our first genuinely interesting absence." He turned toward the door. "What?" "The key to the desk is missing." Bellamy stared at him. "And the guest book has a missing name." "Yes." "The clock has stopped." "Yes." "A window was apparently opened." "Yes." "The mysterious visitor came through the east gate." "Apparently." "And now a missing key." Lord Peter paused. "You see the difficulty?" Bellamy shook his head. "They're all connected." "No," said Lord Peter. "That would be much too convenient." He looked toward the corridor. "They are connected only by one fact." "What fact?" Lord Peter's voice became very quiet. "Every one of them was noticed by someone who had a reason to lie." For the first time that morning, Bellamy stopped smiling. Lord Peter walked back toward the library. Behind him, Clara Wren remained beside the locked desk, watching him go. Her expression had changed, not to fear, to recognition. and Lord Peter, without turning around, knew that she had just remembered something she had forgotten to tell him. Something about the missing name. Clara Wren did not immediately follow them. For perhaps half a minute she remained in Sir Julian's study, standing beside the locked writing desk with one hand resting upon its polished surface. Then she drew a breath, composed her face, and went after Lord Peter. She found him in the library. He was standing before the fireplace, examining the brass bell once more. Inspector Bellamy was at the window. Neither man spoke when she entered. That silence was more disconcerting than an accusation. "Mr. Wimsey." "Yes? I remembered something. I was hoping you would." She looked at Bellamy. "About the Guestbook." Lord Peter's expression did not change. "Go on." "Sir Julian asked me to alter it." Bellamy turned sharply. "Alter it?" "Yes. When?" "Yesterday afternoon." "What did he ask you to do?" Clara's fingers tightened. "He told me that a name would appear in the book which must not remain there." Lord Peter looked toward the Guestbook on the table. "Did he tell you whose name?" "No." "Did you see the name?" "No." "Then how did you know what to remove?" "I was not supposed to remove it." "Ah." Bellamy frowned. "Then what were your instructions?" "He said that if I saw the name, I was to tell him immediately." "And did you?" "No." "Why not?" "Because I never saw anyone sign it." Lord Peter's eyes narrowed slightly. "That is not the same thing." "No." "What happened?" Clara hesitated. "Yesterday evening, shortly after 8, I passed through the entrance hall. The Guestbook was already open. Was there a new name?" "Yes." "Whose?" "I couldn't read it." Bellamy looked incredulous. "You couldn't read a name?" "It had been written very faintly." "Why?" "I don't know." Lord Peter approached the book. "Show me where." She pointed. He opened it. The page was almost entirely covered by the 6 familiar signatures. He looked at them, then at Clara. "Which one?" She pointed to the space between Dr. Pell's name and the margin. Lord Peter smiled. "Interesting. There was another line there," Clara said. "I am certain." "Before or after Dr. Pell?" "After." "Was it written in ink?" "Yes." "Black?" "I think so." "Did you touch it?" "No." "Did anyone else?" "I don't know." "You must have seen who wrote it." "I didn't." "Why?" "Because I was looking into the drawing room." Lord Peter waited. She seemed reluctant to continue. "What happened in the drawing room?" "Mrs. Fane was arguing with Mr. Ambrose." "About?" "Money." "Nothing unusual there, presumably." "No." "What happened next?" "Sir Julian came into the hall." "And?" "He saw the Guestbook." "What did he do?" "He closed it." "Did he look at the new name?" "Yes." "How did he react?" Clara swallowed. "He went very pale." Lord Peter's voice became quieter. "What did he say?" "He said, 'That cannot be here.'" Bellamy looked at him, and then, "Sir Julian took the book into his study." "Did you follow?" "No." "Did he return it?" "Yes." "When?" "Perhaps 20 minutes later." "Was the mysterious name still there?" "I don't know." "You didn't look?" "No." "Why not?" "Because Sir Julian told me never to look again." Lord Peter nodded slowly. "And yet the name disappeared." "Yes." "By itself?" "I don't know." He closed the Guestbook. "Miss Wren, you said the name was faint." "Yes." "Could you see the handwriting?" "Only partly." "Was it familiar?" She hesitated. "Yes." "To whom?" "I don't know." "You have seen the handwriting before?" "Yes." "Where?" Her answer came so quietly that Bellamy almost missed it. "On Sir Julian's private correspondence." Lord Peter looked at the inspector. Bellamy understood the implication. "The missing letter," he said. Clara nodded. Lord Peter moved toward the door. "Where is Mrs. Fane?" "In the blue sitting room." "Then we shall have a conversation with her." They found Lady Fane standing beside the window, looking toward the rain. She was a tall woman in her late 50s, elegantly dressed despite the circumstances. Her face was composed, but the fingers of her right hand were trembling. She turned when they entered. "Mr. Wimsey." "Lady Fane." "I understand you have been asking questions." "I have been asking several." "And have you discovered anything?" "Only that the house is remarkably full of people who remember different versions of the same evening." Her mouth tightened. I don't know what you mean. I'm sure you don't. He indicated a chair. She remained standing. Did you argue with your husband yesterday? Yes. About money? Yes. Did you threaten him? No. Did you say you would ruin him? No. Did you say anything resembling that? Lady Fane looked toward the window. I told him I would leave. Did you mean it? Yes. Why? Because I discovered he had been deceiving me. Bellamy shifted his weight. About another woman? Lady Fane looked at him with icy contempt. Mr. Bellamy, if there had been another woman, I should have considered it an improvement. Lord Peter's eyebrows rose. That is an unusually generous assessment of matrimony. My husband was not an easy man. No. He collected secrets. Did he collect yours? She looked at him sharply. Perhaps. Did he possess a secret concerning you? Yes. Would it have been worth killing him to prevent its disclosure? Her face hardened. No. Would it have been worth stealing a letter? She said nothing. Lord Peter waited. Finally she said, What letter? The one Sir Julian intended to have burned. A tiny movement passed across her face. It was gone almost immediately. But Lord Peter had seen it. You know about it. I know nothing. You ask Miss Wren about it. Lady Fane's silence was sufficient. Bellamy stepped forward. Why? I was concerned. About what? My husband had become secretive. That is hardly new. No. Then why yesterday? Lady Fane looked at Lord Peter. Because someone had written to him. Who? I don't know. You recognized the handwriting. She hesitated. I had seen it before. Lord Peter said nothing. Lady Fane looked suddenly tired. It was my husband's handwriting. Bellamy stared. Lord Peter remained still. His own. Yes. Impossible, said Bellamy. Not impossible. Lady Fane shook her head. I know what it sounds like. It sounds like Sir Julian wrote himself a letter. He did not. Then whose handwriting was it? I don't know. Lord Peter walked slowly to the fireplace. Let us be precise. You saw a letter written in your husband's hand, but you believe he did not write it. Yes. Why? Because the letter was dated 3 years after the event it described. Bellamy frowned. What event? Lady Fane looked toward the door. The death of a man. The room seemed to become colder. Lord Peter turned. Whose death? Arthur Bell. The name meant nothing to Bellamy. Lord Peter, however, repeated it softly. Arthur Bell. Who was he? Lady Fane looked at him. My husband's closest friend. Was. He died 3 years ago. How? An accident. Where? On the railway line near Eastmere. Lord Peter's eyes sharpened. Eastmere? Yes. Near the old chapel. I believe so. Bellamy looked between them. You think this is connected? Lord Peter ignored him. To your knowledge, was Arthur Bell ever a guest at Belminster Hall? Lady Fane gave a bitter little smile. He was here every summer. Did he sign the Guestbook? Yes. Under his own name. She looked away. No. That answer hung in the room. Lord Peter stepped closer. What name did he use? Lady Fane did not answer. Lady Fane. He used another name. Which was? Julian's instructions were that nobody was ever to speak of it. Lord Peter's voice became very quiet. And now that name is missing from the Guestbook. She looked at him. Yes. Bellamy suddenly understood. You think Arthur Bell came here last night? No, said Lord Peter. Why not? Because Arthur Bell is dead. Then who signed the name? Lord Peter turned toward the window. Rainwater streamed down the glass. The wrong question. What is the right one? Who wanted us to believe that Arthur Bell had returned? Before Bellamy could answer, a sharp cry came from the corridor. They rushed outside. Mrs. Vale was standing beside the entrance table. The Guestbook lay open before her. Her face had gone white. What happened? Bellamy demanded. She pointed. Someone had written across the bottom of the page, not in ink, in pencil, 3 words. IWS here. Bellamy stared. Lord Peter approached without touching the page. The handwriting was small, deliberate, and unmistakably similar to the faint writing Clara had described. He studied it for several seconds. Then he looked at the grandfather clock. 11 minutes past 11. Still stopped. Bellamy. Yes? Have the East Gate watched? Why? Because whoever wrote this has made a mistake. What mistake? Lord Peter picked up his hat. They want us to believe they came through the gate last night. And they didn't? No. How do you know? Lord Peter glanced at the pencil message. Because this was written after we entered the library. Bellamy stared. How can you possibly know that? Because I watched the dust. The dust? On the Guestbook. He smiled faintly. Someone has been handling it. And there is no dust beneath the new writing. Bellamy looked puzzled. Lord Peter continued. Which means the book was wiped clean before the message was written. By whom? That, said Lord Peter, is the question we shall ask the person who owns the pencil. He turned toward the staircase. At that exact moment, the grandfather clock began to strike. 1, 2, 3. The sound continued until 11. Bellamy counted under his breath. When the final stroke ended, Lord Peter looked at his watch. 9:58. He smiled. The clock isn't broken, he said. Bellamy stared at him. What is it doing? Lying. And somewhere upstairs, behind a closed door, something metallic fell onto the floor. The metallic sound came from the upper corridor. For one moment nobody moved. Then Bellamy drew his revolver. Lord Peter glanced at it. My dear Bellamy, if you intend to shoot the house, kindly begin with the least valuable furniture. Stay behind me. Impossible. Why? Because you are considerably broader. Bellamy ignored him and hurried toward the staircase. Lord Peter followed at a more leisurely pace. Lady Fane remained in the hall, pale and rigid. Mrs. Vale had pressed herself against the wall. Clara Wren stood beside the library door, staring upward. Another sound came from above, a faint scrape, then silence. Bellamy reached the landing first. The corridor was empty. 4 doors stood along the passage. 2 were open, 1 was locked, and the 4th, Sir Julian's private study, stood ajar. Bellamy approached it cautiously. Lord Peter stopped him. Wait. What? Listen. They listened. Nothing. Then Lord Peter smiled. That is interesting. What is? The silence. Bellamy gave him an irritated look. You dragged me upstairs to listen to nothing. Not nothing. Silence. He pointed toward the study. Close the door. Bellamy did so. The corridor became almost completely silent. Lord Peter nodded. Now open it. Bellamy opened the door. A faint ticking became audible. They looked at one another. What was that? Bellamy whispered. Lord Peter entered. The ticking came from beneath the writing desk. He crouched and looked underneath. A small brass travel clock lay on the floor. Its hands were moving. 11 minutes past 11. Bellamy picked it up. It stopped. No, it isn't moving. Lord Peter examined it. The hands are fixed. Then why did we hear ticking? Because it has just stopped. Bellamy frowned. Lord Peter took the clock from him. The mechanism was warm. Someone wound this. Why? To make us think it had been running. He turned it over. On the back, scratched into the metal, were 2 initials, A.B. Bellamy stared. Arthur Bell, perhaps. You don't believe that? No. Lord Peter looked toward the open desk. Because dead men have a tiresome habit of being unavailable for interviews. The writing desk had been forced. Its drawers stood open. Papers were scattered across the carpet, but the letter Clara had mentioned was nowhere to be seen. Lord Peter searched methodically, not hurriedly, not anxiously. He opened every drawer, examined every envelope, and even inspected the wastepaper basket. Nothing. Then he stopped. A single sheet of paper lay beneath the desk. It had been folded twice. Bellamy reached for it. Lord Peter raised a hand. Don't. He crouched. The paper had been deliberately placed so that one corner remained visible. A trap. Lord Peter lifted it with his handkerchief. There were only 4 words written upon it. Ask her about the train. Bellamy looked at Clara, who had entered the room behind them. She saw the paper. Her expression changed instantly. Lord Peter noticed. So, he said quietly, you know what that means? No. You recognize the handwriting? No. Then you recognize the message? Clara said nothing. Lord Peter folded the paper. Tell me about the train. I don't know anything about it. Arthur Bell died beside a railway line. Yes. 3 years ago. Yes. Where? Eastmere. Which train? I don't know. Lord Peter looked at Bellamy. Find out. The inspector left. Clara remained. Lord Peter watched her carefully. "You are frightened." She shook her head. "Yes, you are." "I am not." "You are frightened of the dead." "No." "Then of the living." She looked at him. That was enough. "Who?" Clara lowered her voice. "I don't know. That's becoming tiresome. I truly don't." "Then tell me what you do know." She looked at the door. "Sir Julian received a letter 3 weeks ago." "From whom?" "I never saw the sender." "What did it contain?" "A photograph." "Of Arthur Bell?" "No." "What, then?" Clara hesitated. "A railway carriage." Lord Peter's face remained expressionless. "Which carriage?" "I don't know." "Did Sir Julian explain?" "He said it proved someone had lied." "About what?" "About the night Arthur Bell died." Lord Peter walked to the window. "What did the photograph show?" "A clock." "What kind?" "A station clock." "Time?" 11:11. Lord Peter became very still. "And the photograph was taken at Eastmere?" "Yes." "On the night Arthur Bell died?" "Yes." "Impossible." "I thought so too." "Why?" "Because the station clock in the photograph showed 11:11. She looked toward the brass clock in his hand. "The same time." Lord Peter placed the little clock on the desk. "Who sent the photograph?" "I don't know." "Did Sir Julian tell anyone?" "I think Lady Fane knew." "And Mr. Ambrose?" "I don't know." "Dr. Pell?" "No." "Reverend Bell?" Clara hesitated. Lord Peter noticed. "Why did you hesitate?" "Because Reverend Bell asked me about it." "When?" "Yesterday." "What exactly did he ask?" "He wanted to know whether Sir Julian had received anything concerning Arthur Bell." "And what did you say?" "That I knew nothing." "Was that true?" "No." Lord Peter smiled faintly. "Excellent. At last, someone in this house is becoming honest." The sound came from the corridor. Footsteps. Clara turned. Lord Peter moved toward the door. Inspector Bellamy appeared. He looked annoyed. "I've found something." "Already?" "The station master at Eastmere remembers the incident." Lord Peter waited. 3 years ago, Arthur Bell was supposedly struck by the 11:10 express. Supposedly. The train passed through Eastmere at 11:14 that night. Lord Peter's eyes narrowed. 4 minutes late. Yes. Was Bell's body found immediately? No. How long? Nearly an hour. Why? The signalman reported seeing a man near the track shortly after 11. And nobody investigated? They did. Then why the delay? Bellamy hesitated. The body wasn't actually beside the main line. Lord Peter looked at him. Where was it? Near the abandoned siding. That line wasn't in use. Correct. Could a train have reached the siding? No. Then Arthur Bell wasn't struck by the express. That is what the police eventually concluded. And the official cause? Head injury. From what? A blow from some heavy object. Lord Peter looked at the brass clock. Was the body carrying a watch? Yes. What time did it show? Bellamy checked his notebook. 11:11. Nobody spoke. The coincidence was becoming unpleasant. Lord Peter turned to Clara. Where is the photograph? I don't know. Sir Julian had it? Yes. Where? In his desk. The desk that was forced. Yes. Lord Peter looked at the open drawers. Then he noticed something. A tiny black smear marked the brass lock. He rubbed it gently. Graphite. Someone used a pencil on this lock. Bellamy frowned. Why? To make the keyhole appear older than it is. Lord Peter examined the scratch marks. The desk wasn't forced last night. When? Then. Recently. How recently? Lord Peter held the brass lock toward the light. Within the last hour. Bellamy's expression changed. But we've been in this room. Yes. And nobody entered. Not through the door. He pointed toward the fireplace. The grate was narrow, but beside it was a concealed service hatch, almost invisible behind the paneling. Bellamy stared. Where does that go? Lord Peter opened it. A cramped passage disappeared into darkness. Servants' passage, he said. Clara suddenly spoke. That leads to the old linen room, which is directly behind this study. Lord Peter looked at her. Who has a key? The housekeeper. Anyone else? Sir Julian. Did he keep it? Yes. Where? In the study. Lord Peter's eyes moved to the floor. The key was not there. Another absence, another lie. He straightened. Bellamy, search the linen room. The inspector went. Lord Peter remained beside the passage. Clara whispered, "What are you thinking?" "That the murderer has been very clever." "Then you know who it is?" "No." "Not yet, not yet." He looked back toward the hall. "But I know one thing." "What?" "The person who wrote 'I was here' wanted us to look outside, and we shouldn't." "No." Lord Peter closed the service hatch. "We should look at the people who never had to come inside." A cry came from the linen room. Bellamy appeared in the doorway holding something between two fingers, a man's cufflink, black enamel, engraved with the initials A.B. Clara covered her mouth. Lord Peter stared at it. Then, very quietly, he said, "Arthur Bell is becoming remarkably untidy for a dead man." Bellamy stepped closer. It was in the linen room. Where? Inside a folded sheet, recently disturbed. Yes. Lord Peter looked at Clara. "Who changes the linen?" "Mrs. Vale." "And who knew the passage existed?" "Everyone who has worked here." "Which means anyone could have used it." Lord Peter shook his head. "No." He walked slowly toward the stairs. "Not anyone." Bellamy followed. "Why not?" "Because the person who used it knew exactly where to go." He stopped halfway down. "Bellamy, when did Sir Julian last employ a full staff?" "Why? Answer me." 3 years ago, I believe." Lord Peter looked back toward the dark service passage. "The year Arthur Bell died." A silence followed. Then Mrs. Vale appeared at the bottom of the stairs. She was holding a silver tray. On it lay a single envelope. "Mr. Wimsey," she said. "Yes?" "This was left for you." He took it. There was no name on the front, only one sentence. "You are asking the wrong servant." Lord Peter looked up. Mrs. Vale was watching him. For the first time since his arrival, the housekeeper smiled. It was a very small smile, and Lord Peter knew at once that Mrs. Vale had just made her first serious mistake. Lord Peter looked at Mrs. Vale for several seconds. The housekeeper stood perfectly still beneath the staircase, the silver tray balanced upon one palm. She had the air of a woman who had delivered tea to bishops and bad news to aristocrats, without ever spilling either. "You have made a mistake," said Lord Peter. Mrs. Vale's eyebrows rose. "I beg your pardon?" You smiled. "I don't see how that is a crime." "Neither do I, but it is usually evidence." Bellamy took the envelope from Lord Peter and examined it. "No seal." "No." "Fingerprints?" "Possibly." "Should we have it dusted?" "Certainly." Bellamy looked toward Mrs. Vale. "Where did you find this?" "I didn't." "Who did?" "No one." The inspector's patience visibly diminished. "Mrs. Vale." "Yes?" "Where did the envelope come from?" "It was on the silver tray when I entered the hall." "And who placed it there?" "I don't know." "You expect us to believe that?" "I expect nothing from the police." Lord Peter's mouth twitched. Bellamy glared at him. "Don't encourage her." "I wasn't. You were smiling." "I frequently smile when things become difficult." Mrs. Vale remained impassive. Lord Peter handed the envelope back to her. "Where did you get the tray?" "From the pantry." "When?" 5 minutes ago." "Why?" "I was preparing tea." "For whom?" "Mrs. Fane." "Did you carry the tray directly here?" "Yes." "Did anyone see you?" "Mr. Ambrose." "Where is he?" "In the dining room." "Excellent." Lord Peter turned to Bellamy. "Go and fetch him." Bellamy departed. Lord Peter watched Mrs. Vale. "Did you know Arthur Bell?" Her face did not move. "No." "Never heard the name?" "No." "Not even 3 years ago?" "No." "Curious." "I don't see why." "Because everyone else in this house has heard it." "I have worked here for 22 years, Mr. Wimsey. I have heard hundreds of names, and forgotten most of them." "Most." "Arthur Bell?" "I don't remember him." Lord Peter nodded. "Very good." Mrs. Vale looked faintly puzzled. "You don't believe me?" "Oh, I believe you perfectly." That seemed to unsettle her more than disbelief would have done. "What does that mean?" "It means you have chosen your words carefully." "I always do." "Exactly." He turned toward the entrance hall. The grandfather clock remained frozen at 11 minutes past 11. Lord Peter walked toward it. Mrs. Vale watched him. "Tell me," he said casually, "who wound the clock yesterday?" "I did." "At what time?" 6. "Why?" "It was slow." "How slow?" 7 minutes. "And you corrected it?" "Yes." "Then why is it now 11 minutes past 11? "Mrs. Hard." Valley's eyes flickered toward the clock. "I don't know." "Did anyone touch it?" "Not that I saw." "Did Sir Julian?" "Not that I know." "Did you hear it strike 11? "No." "Why?" "I was in the kitchen, washing glasses." "Yes." Lord Peter nodded. "Of course." A door opened behind them. Ambrose Fane entered the hall. He was a broad-shouldered man in his early 30s, handsome in the careless manner of men who have been told so often that they no longer need to verify it. His dinner clothes had been exchanged for a dark morning suit, but he had neglected to shave. He looked at Bellamy. "What's happened?" "I'd like a word with you." Ambrose glanced at Lord Peter. "About what?" "Several things." "Then I suppose we'd better get it over with." He entered the library. Lord Peter followed. Mrs. Val remained outside. The door closed. Ambrose sat heavily in a chair. "Is this about my uncle?" "Among other things. I've told Inspector Bellamy everything." "People frequently say that before they have been asked the interesting questions." Ambrose gave him a tired smile. "Are you always like this?" "Only before luncheon." Lord Peter took out his notebook. "You knew Arthur Bell." Ambrose's smile vanished. There was a pause. "Yes." "How?" "He was my uncle's friend." "Were you fond of him?" "Yes." "Did you know he was dead?" "Yes." "When did you last see him?" Ambrose looked directly at him. 3 years ago. On the night he died." "Yes." Bellamy leaned forward. "Where?" "At Eastmere." "What were you doing there?" "Waiting for the train." "Which train?" "The 11:10. "Why?" Ambrose hesitated. "I was meeting someone." "Who?" "I don't remember." Lord Peter smiled. "That is unfortunate." "Why?" "Because I suspect you do." Ambrose's jaw tightened. "Look, Mr. Wimsey, my uncle is dead. I had nothing to do with it. Nobody has accused you. You're implying it. I am merely asking questions." "Then ask them." "Very well." "Did you enter the old chapel 3 years ago?" "No." "Did you go near the abandoned siding?" "No." "Did you see Arthur Bell that night?" Ambrose's eyes shifted. "No." Lord Peter closed his notebook. "You're lying." Ambrose stood. "You can't say that." "I just did." "On what basis?" "Your shoes." Ambrose glanced down. His polished black shoes were perfectly clean. Lord Peter looked amused. "You've been walking in the rain." "No." "Your trouser cuffs are damp." Ambrose glanced at them. "That proves nothing." "Quite right." Lord Peter pointed toward the library window. "But there is pale gravel embedded in the welt of your right shoe." Ambrose went still. "The same gravel found on the path to the east gate." Bellamy rose. "You went outside." "No." "Your shoe says otherwise." Ambrose's face hardened. "I went to the east gate this morning." "Why?" "I wanted air." "At what time?" "About 7. After Sir Julian's body was discovered." "Yes." "Why?" Ambrose stared at him. "I was frightened." "Of what?" "My uncle." "Dead men are generally less troublesome." "You didn't know him?" "No." "But I did." Ambrose looked toward the window. "He was going to destroy me." Bellamy's expression changed. "Financially?" "No." "Then how?" Ambrose sat down again. "My uncle knew about Arthur Bell." Lord Peter remained silent. "He knew I was there that night." "What did you do?" "Nothing." "What happened?" Ambrose swallowed. "I saw Arthur arguing with someone." "Who?" "I couldn't see his face." "Man or woman?" "A man." "Description?" "Tall." "Anything else?" "Dark coat." "Age?" 40, perhaps 50. "Voice?" "English." Lord Peter sighed. An astonishingly large suspect. Ambrose ignored him. Arthur was angry. "About what?" "I don't know." "Then what happened?" "The train came through." "And?" "Afterward, Arthur was gone." "Gone where?" "I don't know." "But his body was found later." "Yes." "You left." "Yes." "Why?" "Because I was afraid. Of the man." Ambrose looked at him. "Of my uncle." Lord Peter leaned forward. "Why?" "Because Sir Julian had told me never to speak of that night. Why would he care? Because Arthur Bell wasn't the man he claimed to be. Silence. Bellamy frowned. What does that mean? Ambrose looked at Lord Peter. He had another name. Lord Peter's eyes narrowed. What name? Ambrose hesitated. Arthur Bell wasn't his real name. Before Lord Peter could answer, something struck the library window. All three men turned. A small stone lay on the carpet. Wrapped around it was a strip of paper. Bellamy rushed to the window. Who threw it? Nobody was visible outside. Lord Peter picked up the paper. The message was written in the same careful pencil as the words in the Guestbook. Stop asking about Arthur Bell. Lord Peter read it twice. Then he smiled. Ambrose stared. You find that amusing? No. Then why are you smiling? Because whoever wrote this has just confirmed something. What? That Arthur Bell matters. He handed the note to Bellamy. Search the grounds. Bellamy moved toward the door. Lord Peter stopped him. Wait, what now? Don't search for the person who threw it. Why not? Because they want you to. Bellamy frowned. Lord Peter pointed toward the stone. Look at the paper. The inspector examined it. Same handwriting. Yes, same pencil. Probably. And Lord Peter's smile disappeared. The paper was torn from a larger sheet. Bellamy looked closer. The edge was ragged. Lord Peter continued. Someone wrote this message in a hurry. How does that help? It doesn't. He turned toward the desk. But the handwriting does. He opened the top drawer. Inside lay several letters. Most were formal correspondence. One was handwritten. Lord Peter lifted it. The writing was almost identical to the threatening note. Bellamy looked over his shoulder. Whose is it? Lord Peter read the signature. Reverend Matthew Bell. Ambrose's face went white. No. Lord Peter looked at him. You recognize it? Ambrose shook his head. No. You do. I don't. You've just lied again. Ambrose stared at the letter. Then he whispered, That's not Reverend Bell's handwriting. Lord Peter said nothing. Ambrose pointed at the signature. My uncle wrote that. Bellamy stepped closer. Sir Julian? Yes. But the letter is addressed to Reverend Bell. Ambrose nodded. And that's impossible. Why? Because Reverend Bell couldn't read. For the first time, Lord Peter looked genuinely surprised. Couldn't read. He lost his sight years ago. Bellamy stared at the letter, the handwriting, the signature, the threatening note, the missing name, the clock, the train. Everything seemed to point in a dozen directions at once. Lord Peter, however, looked almost pleased. He placed the letter back in the drawer. No, he said quietly. Bellamy frowned. No what? We have been assuming that the mystery concerns a dead man returning from the past. He looked toward the grandfather clock. We were wrong. Then what does it concern? Lord Peter's eyes settled on the doorway. The living pretending to be dead. A movement appeared in the hall. Reverend Matthew Bell stood there. He had heard the last sentence. His sightless eyes were fixed directly upon Lord Peter, and in his hand he held the missing key to Sir Julian's writing desk. Reverend Matthew Bell remained in the doorway, one hand resting lightly upon the silver knob. He was a thin man of perhaps 60, dressed in a black clerical suit that seemed almost too severe for the soft grey light of morning. His white hair was neatly brushed, his expression calm, and his sightless eyes possessed the peculiar stillness which often made strangers uncomfortable. In his right hand he held a small brass key. Nobody spoke. Then Lord Peter smiled. Good morning, Reverend. Good morning, Lord Peter. You appear to have found something. I found what I was looking for. Bellamy stepped toward him. That key belongs to Sir Julian's writing desk. Yes. Where did you get it? From Sir Julian. He is dead. Yes. Bellamy frowned. Then I suggest you explain. The Reverend's face remained composed. I was given it yesterday afternoon. By Sir Julian? Yes. When? Shortly before dinner. Why? Bell gave a faint smile. Because Sir Julian believed he might be murdered. The room became very quiet. Lord Peter looked at him with renewed interest. And what precisely did he ask you to do with the key? Keep it. Nothing else. He said that if he died, I was to give it to the police. Bellamy held out his hand. Then I shall take it. The Reverend did not move. Not yet. Bellamy's expression hardened. You are obstructing an investigation. No. Then give me the key. I said not yet. Lord Peter raised one hand. Bellamy. The inspector stopped. Lord Peter approached the Reverend. Why did you come here just now? To return something. The key? No. Bell's hand moved toward the pocket of his coat. Lord Peter watched. The Reverend withdrew a folded sheet of paper. He placed it upon the desk. This was found in the chapel. Bellamy unfolded it. It was a page torn from an old ledger. 3 names had been written upon it. Arthur Bell, Julian Fane, Matthew Bell. Beside each name was a date. The first was 3 years old, the second was yesterday, the third was today's date. Bellamy looked up. What does this mean? I don't know. Lord Peter took the paper. He examined it carefully. Who wrote this? I cannot tell you, because you are blind. The Reverend's expression remained calm. Because I did not see the person who wrote it. Quite. Lord Peter turned the paper over. Nothing. He held it close to his nose. There was a faint smell of smoke. Where exactly did you find it? In the chapel. Inside. Yes. Where? Beneath the altar. Why were you there? To pray. Lord Peter raised an eyebrow. At 9:30 on a Thursday morning, God has never required an appointment. Bellamy almost smiled. Lord Peter did smile. Very good. He handed the paper back. Reverend, how long have you been blind? 11 years. Completely? Yes. Can you distinguish light from darkness? No. Faces? No. Movement? If it makes a sound. Smell? Yes. Touch? Yes. Then perhaps you can tell us something the rest of us have missed. The Reverend inclined his head. I can try. Lord Peter gestured toward the chair. Sit. Bell sat. Lord Peter remained standing. Last night, at approximately 11 o'clock, did you hear anything? Yes. What? A door. Which door? I cannot be certain. But you believe it was inside the hall? Yes. What made you think so? The sound was followed by footsteps. Where? Above me. On the first floor? Yes. How many? 1 person. Man or woman? A man. Bellamy looked at Lord Peter. Could you identify the footsteps? No. But you said they were a man's. They were heavy. Women can be heavy-footed. So can policemen. Bellamy frowned. Lord Peter looked pleased. What else? The clock. What about it? It struck 11. Lord Peter became very still. Did it? Yes. Are you certain? I heard 11 strokes. Bellamy looked toward the grandfather clock. But the clock was stopped. Yes. Lord Peter leaned forward. Reverend, when did you hear it? At 11 o'clock. According to what clock? My watch. You carry a watch? Yes. Why? Blindness does not make one indifferent to punctuality. Lord Peter smiled. And your watch was correct. It is wound every morning. Could it have been wrong? No. Why? I checked it against the wireless at 8. Lord Peter nodded. So at 11 you heard 11 strokes? Yes. Yet the grandfather clock stopped at 11 minutes past 11. Yes. That is impossible. No. Lord Peter studied him. Why not? Because I did not say I heard the grandfather clock. The silence that followed was absolute. Bellamy looked at him. Then what clock did you hear? The chapel clock. Lord Peter turned slowly. The chapel has a clock? It used to. Used to? It has not worked for years. Bellamy stared. Then what struck 11? The Reverend smiled faintly. That is what I hoped you would discover. Lord Peter looked toward the window. The ruined chapel. The old clock. The 11 strokes. The stopped clock inside the hall. Everything was becoming theatrical. And Lord Peter distrusted theatricality almost as much as he distrusted people who enjoyed explaining it. He turned back. Did you hear anyone in the chapel? Yes. Who? I don't know. Did the person speak? No. Did they move? Yes. Where? Behind me. Did you turn? I could not. What happened? I heard the sound of paper being torn. Lord Peter's eyes narrowed. The ledger page. Perhaps. Then footsteps. Yes. Toward the hall? No. Toward the village? No. Where? The Reverend pointed toward the floor. Down. Bellamy frowned. Down. There is a cellar beneath the chapel. Lord Peter looked at him sharply. An entrance? Yes. Still accessible? I believe so. Why didn't you tell us? I assumed you would ask. Lord Peter smiled. An admirable assumption. He turned toward Bellamy. Come. They left the room. Clara Wren remained behind. She looked at the Reverend. You knew. He turned his sightless eyes toward her. Knew what? That Arthur Bell was alive. The Reverend's face changed, only slightly. But Lord Peter, already halfway through the door, noticed. He stopped. Interesting. Clara went pale. The Reverend said nothing. Lord Peter returned. Miss Wren, perhaps you would like to repeat that. She looked frightened. I shouldn't have said it. No, but since you have, we may as well enjoy it. She stared at the Reverend. 3 years ago, Sir Julian told me Arthur Bell was dead. And yesterday he told me he had received proof that Arthur was alive. The Reverend's hands tightened. Sir Julian was mistaken. Was he? Yes. Lord Peter approached him. Reverend, did you know Arthur Bell? No. Did you ever meet him? No. Did you know his real name? No. Did you know he used another name? The Reverend remained silent. Lord Peter's voice softened. You see, Reverend, the difficulty with lying to a detective is that one must remember which lies have already been told. Bell sighed. What do you want from me? The truth. I have given it. No. Lord Peter pointed toward the key. You have given us a key. Then toward the ledger page. You have given us a page. Then toward the chapel. And you have given us a ghost story. He smiled. I want something less imaginative. The Reverend's composure finally cracked. Arthur Bell was not his name. Lord Peter's eyes sharpened. What was? Edward Bell. Your brother. The Reverend nodded. My younger brother. Bellamy looked stunned. You said you didn't know him. I said I didn't know Arthur Bell. And Edward. Edward died 3 years ago. Then Arthur Bell and Edward Bell were the same man. Yes. Why the false name? Because Sir Julian required it. Why? The Reverend lowered his head. Because Edward had stolen something. What? A document. What document? A list. Of what? Names. Lord Peter glanced toward the feet. Guestbook. Names of whom? People who had been involved in a fraud. Bellamy frowned. What fraud? The Reverend looked at him. The estate. Lord Peter said nothing. Bellamy understood first. Belminster. Yes. Sir Julian was stealing from his own estate. No. The Reverend looked toward the ceiling. Sir Julian was covering up what his father had done. The pieces shifted, not into place, but nearer to it. Lord Peter's expression remained thoughtful. Where is the document? I don't know. Who does? Edward. He's dead. No. The Reverend lifted his head. He was alive when Sir Julian died. Bellamy stared. How do you know? Because I spoke to him yesterday. Lord Peter's face became very still. Where? The Reverend pointed toward the library window. Outside. Yesterday. Yes. What time? Just after 8. Bellamy immediately looked toward the window. Lord Peter did not. Instead he asked, what did he say? He said Sir Julian would die before midnight. A cold silence settled over the room. Did he threaten him? No. Did he explain? He said the house had kept his name for 3 years. Lord Peter looked toward the guestbook. The missing name. Yes. And what did Edward want? To take it back. Lord Peter's eyes narrowed. Take what back? The Reverend hesitated. Then he whispered, his name. A sound came from the corridor. Everyone turned. The grandfather clock had begun ticking again. 11 minutes past 11. Lord Peter walked toward it. He opened the glass door. The pendulum was moving. He touched it. It stopped immediately. On the lower edge of the clock face was a fresh smear of blood. Lord Peter stared at it. Bellamy came beside him. Blood? Yes. Sir Julian's? No. How do you know? Lord Peter examined it. Because Sir Julian's blood was on the carpet. He looked at the smear. This is too fresh. Bellamy's hand moved toward his revolver. Someone is in the house. No. Then what? Lord Peter looked toward the staircase. Someone has just left. He turned to the Reverend. Which way does the chapel cellar connect? The Reverend pointed. Beneath the hall. Lord Peter smiled. Of course. Bellamy stared. What? The murderer hasn't been entering the house. He picked up his hat. They've been living underneath it. And before Bellamy could ask another question, Lord Peter was already moving toward the hidden passage. The hidden passage was narrower than Lord Peter had expected. It began behind the linen room wall and descended by a flight of uneven stone steps into darkness. The air smelled of damp earth, old timber, and something faintly medicinal. Bellamy followed with his revolver drawn. You said the murderer has been living underneath the house. I said someone has. That's not reassuring. I wasn't attempting to reassure you. Lord Peter struck a match. The flame illuminated a low passage with rough brick walls. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, though not everywhere. That was the first thing he noticed. Don't step forward. Bellamy stopped. What? Look at the floor. A line of dust ran along the passage, except where it had been disturbed. 2 sets of footprints led into the darkness. One set was recent, the other was older. Bellamy crouched. The recent ones, boots, and the older, smaller, could belong to the same person. No. How can you tell? The stride. Lord Peter pointed. The recent footprints are evenly spaced. The older ones aren't. Meaning? The person was carrying something. Bellamy looked ahead. What? Something heavy, they continued. After 30 yards, the passage divided. One branch led toward the chapel, the other toward the hole. Lord Peter examined the junction. A faint streak of mud marked the right-hand wall. Someone turned sharply here. Bellamy looked at it. Recently? Very. Lord Peter touched the mud. It was still moist. He held his fingers beneath his nose. Chalk. Chalk? Yes. Bellamy looked at the stone wall. There isn't any chalk here. No. Lord Peter smiled. That is why it is interesting. They followed the marks toward the hole. The passage narrowed again. Then they heard something. A faint metallic scrape. Bellamy raised his revolver. Lord Peter raised one finger. Quiet. The sound came again. Metal against stone. Then a muffled cough. Someone was ahead. They moved forward slowly. The passage opened into a small underground chamber. A lantern burned on the floor. Beside it stood a wooden table, and on the table was the missing guestbook. Bellamy whispered, How? Lord Peter approached. The book was open. The page containing the names had been torn out. Beside it lay a small black fountain pen. Lord Peter picked it up with a handkerchief. Still warm. Bellamy stared. Impossible. No. Lord Peter looked toward the far wall. There was a second doorway, open. Someone was here. Just now. Yes. Bellamy hurried toward it. Lord Peter stopped him. Wait. What? There is something on the floor. A small brass object lay near the doorway. It was the key to Sir Julian's writing desk. Bellamy picked it up. The Reverend said he had it. He did. Then how did it get here? Lord Peter examined the key. Perhaps he dropped it. While walking through a secret passage? People are remarkably careless when frightened. Bellamy looked unconvinced. Lord Peter turned toward the table. There were several objects on it. A photograph, a railway timetable, a folded map, and a sheet of paper covered with names. The photograph showed Eastmere Station. The clock above the platform read 11:11. In the foreground stood 2 men. One was unmistakably Sir Julian Fane. The other had his back to the camera. Bellamy leaned closer. Arthur Bell? Possibly. Can we identify him? No. Lord Peter turned the photograph over. A date had been written on the back. 3 years ago, and beneath it, the night the name disappeared. Bellamy stared. What name? Lord Peter unfolded the list. There were 12 names. Several were crossed out. 3 had been circled. Julian Fane, Matthew Bell, Arthur Bell. Beside Arthur Bell's name was another word. Edward. Bellamy looked at Lord Peter. So the Reverend lied. Of course. He knew Arthur was Edward. Yes. He knew Edward was alive. Yes. He was hiding him. Perhaps. Then why bring us here? Lord Peter looked at the passage. That is the better question. A sound came from behind them. The chamber door slammed shut. Bellamy spun around. The lantern flickered. Lord Peter remained perfectly still. Someone was running through the passage. They heard footsteps retreating. Bellamy rushed toward the door. It opened. The corridor beyond was empty. He ran after the sound. Lord Peter followed. They reached the junction. Nothing. No footsteps, no voice, no movement. Only a small wooden door stood open at the end of the left passage. Bellamy pushed through. They emerged into the ruined chapel. Rain fell through the collapsed roof. The place was empty. Lord Peter looked around. Then at the ground, a trail of wet footprints crossed the stone floor. They led toward the altar. Bellamy followed. Behind the altar was a narrow stairway descending into another cellar. He looked at Lord Peter. Another passage? No. Lord Peter crouched. The footprints ended abruptly. There was nowhere else to go. Bellamy looked around. Where did he disappear? Lord Peter examined the wall. Through here. There isn't a door. Not an obvious one. His fingers moved across the stone, then stopped. A concealed latch clicked. A section of the wall opened inward. Bellamy stared. How many secret passages does this place have? Enough to make the architect proud and the fire brigade miserable. They entered. The hidden chamber beyond was much smaller. A chair stood in the center. A blanket had been thrown across it. Beside the chair was a tin cup. Someone had been living here recently. Lord Peter examined the blanket. Still warm. Bellamy looked alarmed. He can't have gone far. He hasn't. How do you know? Because he left this. On the chair was a photograph. This one was different. It showed Sir Julian standing beside a younger man. The younger man had the same narrow face as Reverend Bell. Bellamy stared. Edward. Lord Peter nodded. On the back of the photograph was a message. You have been looking at the wrong death. Lord Peter read it twice. Then he turned the photograph over again. Something else was written beneath the first sentence. The body in the library is not the first body. Bellamy went pale. You think there was another murder? No. Then what? Lord Peter looked toward the chapel. I think there was another body. That sounds like the same thing. Not necessarily. He walked back into the larger chamber. The railway timetable was still on the table. He studied it. Bellamy, yes. What time did the 11:10 express reach Eastmere 3 years ago? 11:14. And when was Arthur Bell's body found? Just after midnight. Who reported it? The signalman. Name. Thomas Greaves. Lord Peter's finger moved down the timetable. The train stopped here? No. It passed through? Yes. Did any other train use the line? Not that night. Lord Peter looked at the photograph again. The station clock. 11:11. A man standing beside Sir Julian. And another detail. He had initially overlooked it. In the photograph's lower corner was the reflection of a third figure in the glass of the station office. Lord Peter held it closer. The figure was wearing a clerical collar. Bellamy noticed. Reverend Bell. Perhaps. But he says he was at the hall. Lord Peter smiled. Perhaps he was. Bellamy frowned. How could he be in two places? He couldn't. Then someone else wore his coat. Exactly. Lord Peter slipped the photograph into his pocket. We need to speak with Mrs. Fane. Why? Because she has known about the second identity from the beginning. How do you know? The letter. What letter? The one she claimed not to know. Lord Peter turned toward the passage. The handwriting she recognized wasn't Sir Julian's. Then whose? Edward Bell's. Bellamy's face hardened. But Edward was supposedly dead. Exactly. They returned to the hall. By the time they reached the library, Mrs. Fane was gone. Clara stood alone beside the desk. Where is Lady Fane? Lord Peter asked. She went upstairs. When? 5 minutes ago. Did she say where? No. Lord Peter looked at the staircase, then at the guest book. The page was still open, but something had changed. A seventh name had appeared. The handwriting was faint, almost invisible. Lord Peter leaned closer. Bellamy read it aloud. Edward Bell. Clara covered her mouth. Lord Peter did not move. Instead, he looked toward the grandfather clock. 11 minutes past 11, then toward the staircase. Bellamy. Yes? Do you remember what I said about the clock? That it was lying? No. Lord Peter's expression became grave. I said it was lying because someone wanted us to believe it was broken. He pointed toward the new name. Now we know why. Bellamy stared. Why? Because the clock is not measuring time. He looked at the guestbook. It is marking events. A floorboard creaked upstairs. Everyone looked up. Then came a woman's voice. Lady Fane. A single sentence. Mr. Wimsey, you must come quickly. Lord Peter reached the staircase. Why? Her voice came again. Because I found Sir Julian's missing letter. A pause. Then, and I think the murderer has just killed again. Lord Peter went up the staircase without hurrying. It was a peculiar characteristic of his that haste seemed to him an admission that events were in charge. He preferred to give the impression that events had merely been waiting for him to catch up. Bellamy followed close behind, while Clara remained at the foot of the stairs. Lady Fane stood outside the master bedroom. The door was open. She was holding a sheet of paper in both hands. Her face had lost all color. You said the murderer had killed again, said Lord Peter. I don't know. An excellent beginning. She looked at him helplessly. Come inside. Lord Peter entered. The bedroom was large, cold, and severely furnished. Sir Julian's bed stood against the far wall. His dressing gown hung over a chair. A silver-backed hairbrush lay upon the dressing table. Nothing appeared disturbed, except for the writing desk. It stood beneath the window. Its lock had been forced. Again, Lord Peter looked at it. Someone has been busy. Lady Fane held out the paper. This was inside. He took it carefully. The letter was old. The paper had yellowed slightly, and the ink had faded around the edges. The handwriting was Sir Julian's. At least, it appeared to be. Lord Peter read it. Then he read it again. Bellamy waited. What does it say? Lord Peter folded it once. Very little. That isn't what I asked. It says that Arthur Bell did not die at Eastmere. Bellamy stared. Lady Fane closed her eyes. What else? That Sir Julian knew this, and that Edward Bell was not Arthur Bell. Bellamy looked confused, but Reverend Bell said, yes. Lord Peter raised a finger, which is precisely why we must stop accepting statements merely because they have been repeated. He returned to the letter. There was one final paragraph. He read it silently. Then his expression altered. Interesting. What? Bellamy demanded. Lord Peter handed him the paper. The final sentence read, If I am found dead, do not trust the person who tells you that Edward Bell is alive. Bellamy looked up. But Edward Bell is alive. Perhaps. We have been told he is. Precisely. Lady Fane sank onto the edge of the bed. I knew something was wrong. Lord Peter turned toward her. You knew? I knew Julian was afraid. Of Edward Bell? No. Then whom? She hesitated. Of himself. Lord Peter waited. She continued. My husband had been receiving letters for months. They were always unsigned. He became convinced that someone was reconstructing the past. Whose past? The estate's. What did Edward Bell have to do with it? I don't know. You recognized his handwriting? Yes. On the letter? Yes. But you said you had seen it before. I had. Where? Lady Fane looked down. In letters my husband received 3 years ago. Lord Peter's eyes narrowed. 3 years ago. Yes. Letters from Edward. I assumed so. Did you ever meet Edward Bell? No. Then how do you know the handwriting was his? She looked up. Because Julian told me. Lord Peter smiled without amusement. And you trusted him? He was my husband. That is not the same thing. She looked offended. Mr. Wimsey, no offense intended. Marriage is simply a very elaborate system for discovering that another person has been wrong about you for 20 years. Bellamy coughed. Lord Peter turned back to the desk. Lady Fane, where did you find this letter? In the false bottom. Which you knew existed? No. Then how did you find it? She pointed toward the dressing table. The mirror. Lord Peter examined it. An ornate oval mirror hung above the table. He moved it. Nothing. He pressed the frame. Nothing. Then he noticed a tiny scratch along the wooden edge. He pushed. A section of the frame clicked open. Inside was a narrow compartment. Empty. Someone removed something, he said. Lady Fane stared. What? Whatever was here. I didn't know there was a compartment. Neither did the murderer, apparently. Bellamy frowned. Why? Because they searched the desk but missed this. Lord Peter looked at the letter. Unless they didn't. A floorboard creaked. All three turned. Clara stood in the doorway. She looked frightened. Miss Wren. I heard something. Where? Downstairs. Bellamy immediately moved toward the corridor. Lord Peter stopped him. Don't. Why? Because if someone is downstairs, they want us to hear them. Bellamy stared. Then what do you suggest? Nothing. Lord Peter walked to the bedroom window. He opened it. Cold air entered. Below was the gravel drive. Rain had begun again. He looked down. There were footprints, fresh ones, leading away from the house, but only one set. He studied them, then smiled. What? Bellamy had joined him. The murderer has left. You're sure? Yes. How? Because they want us to believe they have. Bellamy groaned. You're doing that deliberately. Doing what? Making everything sound like a riddle. I assure you, Bellamy, I am making everything sound like a riddle because it is a riddle. Lord Peter closed the window. However, the footprints are useful. How? They belong to a woman. Bellamy looked down. Those are men's boots. No. Lord Peter pointed. Notice the right heel. Bellamy examined it. The outer edge is worn. Exactly. And someone has altered the sole. With what? Leather. Lord Peter straightened. A man's boot has been fitted over a woman's smaller shoe. Bellamy stared at him. Why would anyone do that? To create a false trail. Then the murderer is still in the house. Possibly. Lady Fane suddenly spoke. Mrs. Vale. Lord Peter turned. What about her? She wears men's boots when she works outside. Bellamy looked at Lord Peter. Convenient. Very. They left the bedroom. Mrs. Vale was nowhere in the corridor. They searched the kitchen. Empty. The pantry. Empty. The servants' hall. Empty. Then Lord Peter noticed the back door. It stood open. Rain blew across the stone threshold. On the floor was a wet handprint. Bellamy crouched. Someone left through here. Lord Peter shook his head. Someone wanted us to think so. He looked toward the pantry. A row of boots stood neatly against the wall. One pair was missing. Mrs. Vale's. Bellamy pointed. There. Lord Peter approached. He examined the remaining boots. Her outdoor boots. She's wearing them. No. He looked again. She isn't. Then where is she? Lord Peter glanced at the ceiling. Perhaps we should ask the person who left the handprint. Bellamy looked puzzled. It's a handprint. Yes. Whose? Lord Peter crouched beside it. Small. Mrs. Vale? No. Clara? No. Lady Fane? No. Then whose? Lord Peter's smile disappeared. Sir Julian's. Bellamy stared. Impossible. Yes. He examined the print. The fingers were long. The thumb was slightly crooked. Lord Peter had seen Sir Julian's hands that morning. He remembered the unusual bend in the left thumb. It is his. But he's dead. Lord Peter stood, which makes the print considerably more interesting. They returned to the library. The guest book remained open. The new name, Edward Bell, was still there. Lord Peter bent over it. Then he noticed something else. The handwriting wasn't faint anymore. It had darkened. The ink was drying. Bellamy looked at it. Fresh. Yes. When was it written? Within the last few minutes. By whom? Lord Peter didn't answer. He lifted the book. Beneath the page was a second sheet, a carbon impression. The missing name from the original entry had been transferred onto it. Lord Peter held the page beneath the light. Slowly the letters became visible. He read them. Then he closed his eyes. Bellamy waited. What does it say? Lord Peter opened them. It isn't Edward Bell. Then who? He turned the page toward the inspector. The name was Edward Fane, Lady Fane's maiden name. Bellamy looked at her. She had gone white. That is impossible, she whispered. Lord Peter looked at her. Is it? I never used that name here. Your brother did. She stared. Lord Peter's voice became quiet. You told us Arthur Bell was your husband's friend. Yes. You told us Edward Bell was your husband's friend's brother. Yes. You told us you never met Edward. Yes. Then why does your maiden name appear in the guest book? Lady Fane said nothing. Lord Peter watched her carefully. Because Edward Bell was never a man. Bellamy looked startled. What? Lord Peter continued. Edward was the name used by someone who needed to conceal another identity. Lady Fane's lips parted. Who? Lord Peter looked toward the staircase. That's what we are going to discover. A sudden crash came from the library. The three of them spun around. The grandfather clock had fallen forward. Its glass face had shattered. Behind the clock was a narrow cavity in the wall. Inside lay a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Lord Peter approached it. Bellamy drew his revolver. Don't touch it. I wasn't going to. He crouched. The bundle was stained dark brown. Blood. Old blood. He carefully opened one corner. Inside was a man's coat, a railwayman's coat. On the breast was a torn name badge. Thomas Greaves. Bellamy stared. The signalman. Lord Peter nodded. The man who reported finding Arthur Bell's body. He examined the coat. A deep puncture marked the fabric beneath the ribs, exactly where Sir Julian had been stabbed. Bellamy whispered, "Same wound." Lord Peter looked toward the doorway. No. What? Not the same wound. He touched the blood-stained cloth. This one is 3 years old. Silence. Then Lord Peter saw something sewn inside the coat, a small piece of paper. He removed it. There were only 3 words. The first body lied. Bellamy stared at him. So who was killed 3 years ago? Lord Peter looked toward the guest book, then toward the shattered clock, finally toward the closed service passage. Not Arthur Bell. Then who? Lord Peter's expression was grim. The signalman. The floorboard creaked behind them. They turned. Mrs. Vale stood in the doorway. She was holding a kitchen knife, but she wasn't looking at Lord Peter. She was looking at the coat. Her face had collapsed into something that was neither fear nor surprise. Recognition. Lord Peter spoke softly. Mrs. Vale. She looked at him. You know this coat. She lowered the knife. Yes. Whose is it? Her eyes filled with tears. Then she whispered, My husband's. Bellamy stared. Thomas Greaves? She nodded. Lord Peter said nothing. Mrs. Vale looked at the dead man's coat and spoke again. My husband didn't die 3 years ago. She lifted her eyes toward Lord Peter. He disappeared. And suddenly the entire house seemed to become very quiet. For several seconds nobody spoke. Mrs. Honenman sitant. Vile stood motionless in the doorway, the kitchen knife hanging loosely from her hand. The rain beat against the windows with monotonous persistence, and somewhere behind the shattered grandfather clock, a small spring continued to tick. Bellamy was the first to recover. Your husband, Mrs. Mass. Vile nodded. Thomas Greaves, the signalman at Eastmere. Yes. You told us nothing about this. You never asked. Bellamy stared at her. We asked whether you knew Arthur Bell, and I answered. You said you had never heard the name. I hadn't. But you knew Thomas Greaves. I knew my husband. Lord Peter raised one hand. Bellamy. The inspector stopped. Lord Peter turned to Mrs. Vile. Let us begin again. This time, we shall try not to waste one another's time. She looked exhausted. All right. Thomas Greaves disappeared 3 years ago. Yes. When? The night Arthur Bell supposedly died. Supposedly. She nodded. Thomas left the signal box at 11:20. Why? He said someone had called him. Who? He wouldn't say. Did he return? No. When did you report him missing? I didn't. Lord Peter's eyebrows rose. Why not? Because Sir Julian told me not to. Bellamy swore softly. Lord Peter remained calm. What did Sir Julian say? That Thomas had run away. Did you believe him? No. Yet you obeyed him. Mrs. Vile looked toward the coat. I had no choice. You always have a choice. Not when a man's life is being held over your head. Bellamy stepped forward. Whose life? Mrs. Vale looked at him. My son's. The inspector stopped. Lord Peter's voice remained gentle. Where is he? Canada. Was he involved in anything? No. Then why would Sir Julian threaten him? Because Sir Julian knew that if I spoke, my son would be accused of something he didn't do. What? Mrs. Vale closed her eyes. Foggery. The words seemed to settle heavily over the room. Lord Peter looked toward the scattered papers. Foggery of what? Estate documents. Belminster? Yes. Who forged them? I don't know. But Sir Julian did. She nodded. He made my husband disappear because Thomas had discovered something. What? Mrs. Vale looked toward the ruined clock. The Guestbook. Lord Peter's expression sharpened. The Guestbook. Thomas discovered that names had been changed. When? 3 years ago. What names? People who were supposed to have stayed at Belminster. Hadn't they? No. Then why were their names there? To make it appear that they had been here. For what purpose? Mrs. Vale hesitated. Alibis. Bellamy's face hardened. Whose? Sir Julian's. Lord Peter walked slowly toward the Guestbook. Explain. Mrs. Vale followed him with her eyes. Sir Julian had been altering dates and names for years. Whenever something happened outside the hall, he could prove that certain people had been here. Why? Because he needed witnesses. To what? To his own version of events. Lord Peter opened the Guestbook. The pages suddenly looked less like a record of hospitality and more like a ledger of carefully manufactured lies. Thomas discovered this? Yes. And what did he do? He copied the pages. Where are the copies? I don't know. Lord Peter looked at the coat. Thomas kept them? He told me he had hidden them. Where? He never said. Did Sir Julian know? Yes. And that is why Thomas disappeared. Mrs. Vale nodded. Bellamy looked at Lord Peter. Then who was the man found near the railway 3 years ago? Lord Peter answered before Mrs. Vale could. Someone Sir Julian wanted us to believe was Thomas. Mrs. Vale shook her head. No. Lord Peter turned. What? The body was not Thomas. You know this. Yes. How? She swallowed. Because I saw him. Bellamy frowned. You saw your husband's body? No. Then what? The man they called Arthur Bell. She pointed toward the coat. My husband had a scar here. She touched her left wrist. Thomas had it from childhood, a burn. And the body, no scar. Yet you were told it was Arthur Bell. Yes. Did you see the body? No. Then how do you know? Because Thomas came back. Silence. Bellamy stared. When? 3 days after he disappeared. Lord Peter's eyes narrowed. Where? Here. In the hall. Yes. Did you speak to him? No. Why not? He came to the kitchen door after midnight. He wouldn't come inside. Did he say anything? He told me to forget him. Why? He said Sir Julian was watching. Did you see his face? Yes. Was it Thomas? Mrs. Vale looked directly at him. Yes. Then where did he go? He disappeared again. Where? I don't know. Lord Peter looked at the coat. Did he tell you why he had returned? He said he had found the truth. What truth? That the man who died at Eastmere wasn't Arthur Bell. Lord Peter's gaze shifted toward Bellamy. And the man who died? Mrs. Vale shook her head. I don't know. Did Thomas? He said there were 2 bodies. The room became very still. Bellamy whispered. 2. Mrs. Vale nodded. One belonged to the man Sir Julian called Arthur Bell. And the other? She looked toward the staircase. Thomas said the second body was hidden here. Lord Peter's expression changed. Here? In Belminster? Where? He wouldn't tell me. Why? Because he said the person who had killed the first man was still living in the house. Bellamy immediately looked toward the other occupants. Lady Fane, Clara Wren, Ambrose Fane, Reverend Bell, and Mrs. Vale herself. Lord Peter noticed the movement. Don't look at them like that, Bellamy. Murder becomes much too easy when one has a collection of frightened faces. He turned to Mrs. Vale. What happened after Thomas returned? He left again, and you never saw him. Not until yesterday. Lord Peter stopped. You saw him yesterday? She nodded. When? Just after 8. In the hall? No. Where? By the east gate. Lord Peter's expression hardened. Did you speak? Yes. What did he say? He told me Sir Julian would die. Did he say how? No. Did he say who would kill him? Mrs. Olmisitu found one. Wiley hesitated. He said the person who killed Thomas had already killed once. Bellamy stared. Thomas was alive. Yes. Then who did he mean? Mrs. Weil looked at Lord Peter. I don't know. Lord Peter considered this. Then he walked to the coat. He examined the blood-stained puncture again. Bellamy. Yes? Fetch Dr. Pell. Why? Because I want him to examine this. Bellamy left. Lord Peter looked at Mrs. Weil. One final question. Yes? Why did you bring the coat here? I didn't. He looked at her. It was in the wall. Yes? Then who put it there? She shook her head. I don't know. Lord Peter looked at the hidden cavity. Someone wanted us to find it. Yes? Which means someone wants us to believe Thomas Greaves was murdered. Mrs. Varley frowned. He may have been. Yes. But you don't believe it. I don't believe anything yet. He smiled faintly. Except that someone has been trying very hard to make this house tell a particular story. Clara spoke from the doorway. Perhaps it is telling the wrong one. Everyone turned. She held a small bundle of papers. Lord Peter looked at them. Where did you get those? From Sir Julian's desk. I thought it was empty. It was. Then. I found them beneath the carpet. She handed them over. They were copies of Guestbook pages. Lord Peter spread them across the desk. The dates covered 3 years. Names appeared and disappeared. Some had been written in Sir Julian's hand, others in different hands. He compared them. Then he stopped. One name occurred repeatedly. Metacw Bell. Beside it, however, the handwriting changed. Sometimes it was Sir Julian's, sometimes Reverend Bell's, sometimes another hand entirely. Lord Peter examined the final page. The date was yesterday. There were only 3 names. Julian Fane, Mate Athet Bell, Edward Fane, and beneath them, in tiny letters, the 4th name is the one that matters. Bellamy returned with Dr. Pell. The doctor approached the coat. He examined the puncture, then looked up. This wasn't made by a knife. Lord Peter smiled. I thought not. Bellamy frowned. Then what? Dr. Pell pointed toward the tier. A railway spike. Lord Peter's eyes sharpened. Interesting. Why? Because railway spikes are not normally found in libraries. Dr. Pell examined the fabric again. This blood is old. How old? At least 3 years. Bellamy looked at Lord Peter. So the coat belongs to Thomas? No. Why not? Lord Peter pointed toward the collar. Look, a small label had been sewn inside. Thomas Greaves. Bellamy stared. Then it is his. Not necessarily. It's his name. Yes. Lord Peter pulled the label gently. It came away. Beneath it was another label. Edward Bell. Everyone went silent. Lord Peter held it up. The coat belonged to Edward Bell. Reverend Bell, who had remained in the doorway throughout the examination, suddenly spoke. No. Lord Peter turned. The Reverend's face was pale. No, he repeated. You know it. That coat belonged to my brother. Then why was Thomas Greaves' name sewn over his? The Reverend did not answer. Lord Peter approached him. Because someone wanted to disguise the body. The Reverend's hands trembled. My brother was dead. Were you certain? Yes. How? I identified him. With no sight. The Reverend looked at him. I knew his voice. That is not identification. I knew his hands. Again, not enough. I knew his scar. Lord Peter paused. What scar? A burn on his wrist. Mrs. Vailey suddenly spoke. Edward Bell had no scar. The Reverend turned toward her. Yes, he did. No, he did. Thomas Greaves had the scar. The two stared at one another. Lord Peter looked from one to the other, and suddenly the pieces shifted again. Not Edward Bell. Not Thomas Greaves. Not Arthur Bell. 3 names. 3 identities. 1 body. Perhaps. He turned to Bellamy. Where is the body? What body? Sir Julian's. In the morgue. Then we have made an elementary mistake. Bellamy looked confused. What? We have been examining the identity of the dead men. Lord Peter picked up the Guestbook. We should have been examining the identity of the living. He looked at Reverend Bell. Tell me your brother's full name. The Reverend hesitated, then said, Edward Matthew Bell. Lord Peter went still. Bellamy's eyes widened. Matthew Bell. The Reverend nodded. Lord Peter looked at the Guestbook. Matthew Bell. Edward Bell, Arthur Bell. 3 names, 1 family. And suddenly Lord Peter understood why the 4th name mattered. He turned toward Lady Fane. Your maiden name was Fane. Yes. Your father's name. She stared at him. Edward Fane. Lord Peter closed the guest book. Then the 4th name isn't Edward Fane. Lady Fane looked terrified. What is it? Lord Peter's voice became very quiet. It is the name of the person who has been using all 4 identities. He looked toward the Reverend, Matthew Bell, then toward the housekeeper, Thomas Greaves, then toward Lady Fane, Edward Fane, finally toward the guest book, Arthur Bell. Bellamy stared. You think one person used all those names? No. Lord Peter smiled grimly. I think 2 people did. The sudden noise came from upstairs. A door slammed. Then came a woman's scream. Lady Fane. Lord Peter ran for the staircase. This time he did not object to haste. At the top landing, he found the master bedroom empty. The window was open. Rain blew across the floor. Lady Fane's scarf lay beside the bed, and on the mirror, written in fresh blood, were 5 words. The guest book has 1 more name. Lord Peter stared at the message. Then he looked at the floor. There were 2 sets of footprints. One belonged to Lady Fane. The other was barefoot. Both led toward the hidden passage, but only one set came back. Lord Peter quietly closed his notebook. Now, he said, we are finally getting somewhere. Lord Peter stood at the top of the stairs and examined the footprints for nearly half a minute. Bellamy, who had reached the landing behind him, was breathing heavily. Where is she? Gone. I can see that. Then your powers of observation are improving. Bellamy ignored him. He crouched beside the footprints. One set barefoot. Yes. And the other belongs to Lady Fane. Yes. They lead into the passage. Yes. And only one comes back. Lord Peter nodded. So either Lady Fane has been abducted, or the person who took her wished us to believe she had been. Bellamy looked at him. You really don't believe anything. I believe several things. I simply prefer not to announce them prematurely. He examined the bloody writing on the mirror. The guest book has 1 more name. He leaned closer. Not blood. Bellamy frowned. What? Red ink. You're certain? Quite. Lord Peter touched the writing with a handkerchief. The stain transferred immediately. No coagulation. So someone staged this. Of course. Bellamy looked down the corridor. Then Lady Fane may still be alive. Almost certainly. Why? Because a dead woman cannot be used to frighten us very effectively. Lord Peter opened the concealed panel. The passage beyond was dark. He struck a match. The flame illuminated the first few feet. A small silver brooch lay on the floor. Lady Fane's. Bellamy picked it up. Fresh. Very. Lord Peter looked at the stone beside it. There was a smear of chalk. The same pale chalk they had found earlier. Someone has been moving through here repeatedly. Bellamy drew his revolver. This time, we search every inch. An excellent idea. They entered. The passage descended sharply. The air became colder. Behind them, the hall disappeared into darkness. After perhaps 20 yards, Lord Peter stopped. Listen. A faint sound came from ahead. Breathing. Then a whisper. Peter. Bellamy raised his revolver. Lord Peter held up a hand. Lady Fane. Yes. The voice came from the chamber beyond. They hurried forward. Lady Fane was sitting on the floor beside a stone pillar. Her wrists were tied with a silk cord. Her dress was torn at the sleeve, but she was otherwise unharmed. Bellamy knelt and cut the cord. Who brought you here? She looked at Lord Peter. I don't know. You saw the person? Yes. Man or woman? I couldn't tell. Why? They wore a servant's coat and had their face covered. Did they speak? Yes. What did they say? Lady Fane swallowed. They said I had been very foolish. Anything else? They asked me where Julian kept the final page. Lord Peter's expression sharpened. What final page? The guest book. Bellamy looked confused. The page was already torn out. Lady Fane shook her head. No, there was another page. Where? In Julian's private collection. Lord Peter helped her stand. What did the page contain? Names. Whose? People who had attended Belminster over the last 20 years. That is not unusual. Not the names themselves. She looked at him. The dates. Lord Peter waited. Lady Fane continued. Some of the dates were impossible. How? People were recorded as being here after they had died. Bellamy stared. After they died. Yes. Lord Peter's eyes narrowed. False alibis. Lady Fane nodded. Julian had discovered that someone had been using the Guestbook to establish false timelines. Who? I don't know, but you suspected someone. She hesitated. Matthew. Lord Peter looked at her. Reverend Bell? Yes. Why? Because Julian once told me that the Bell family had been connected with the estate for generations. That proves nothing. No. She looked toward the darkness behind them, but Matthew knew things he should not have known. What things? The exact contents of letters Julian had never shown him. Lord Peter's expression became thoughtful. Did Matthew have access to the house? Yes. As a priest? Yes. Could he move around without attracting attention? Lady Fane gave a bitter smile. People trust priests, an unfortunate habit. Bellamy looked toward the tunnel. We should get her back upstairs. Not yet. Why? Lord. Peter pointed at the wall. There was a second inscription carved into the stone. Not in blood. Not in ink. Scratched directly into the mortar. One name was removed. One name was added. The truth is between them. Bellamy stared. Lord Peter touched the letters. Recent. Lady Fane looked frightened. What does it mean? It means our friend has become rather fond of riddles. Who? Lord Peter did not answer. Instead, he examined the floor. There were footprints, bare feet, the same pattern they had seen upstairs. They continued deeper into the passage. Lord Peter followed them. After 30 yards, they reached a wooden door. It was locked. Bellamy tried the handle. Nothing. Lord Peter removed the brass key from his pocket. The desk key. He inserted it. The lock opened. Bellamy stared. I thought the key was found in the underground chamber. This is a duplicate. Where did you get it, Mrs. Vale? You never told me. I didn't think you'd enjoy the suspense. The door opened. Beyond was a small room filled with boxes, old estate records, ledgers, letters, photographs, and, against the far wall, a narrow iron bed. Someone had been living there, recently. A cup of tea still stood on a table. Steam no longer rose from it, but the liquid was warm. Bellamy looked around. He's just left. Or she. Lord Peter examined the bed. The blanket had been pulled back. Beside it lay a pair of women's shoes. Bellamy stared. Lady Fane? No. How do you know? Those shoes are too small. Lord Peter lifted one. Inside was a name written in faded ink. Clara W-R-E-N. Bellamy's face changed. Clara. Lord Peter looked at the shoes. Interesting. He opened a wooden box. Inside were dozens of letters. Most were addressed to Sir Julian. Some were addressed to Arthur Bell. Others to Edward Bell, and several to Thomas Greaves. All bore the same handwriting. Lord Peter spread them across the table. Bellamy stared. The same person wrote all of them. Yes. But these names belong to different people. Exactly. Lady Fane stepped closer. What does that mean? It means the identities were being manufactured. By whom? Lord Peter picked up the oldest letter. The date was 21 years earlier. The signature was clear. Julian Fane. But the handwriting was not Sir Julian's. He placed it beside a recent letter supposedly written by Edward Bell. Identical. Then beside a letter from Thomas Greaves. Identical again. Bellamy looked stunned. Someone forged all of them. Not merely forged them. Lord Peter pointed to the dates. They used the letters to create histories. For whom? For people who did not exist in the form the records claimed. Lady Fane whispered. Why? Lord Peter looked at the ledgers. Money. He opened one. Property transfers. Trust accounts. Inheritance payments. Charitable donations. Names appeared beside each transaction. Several belonged to people who had supposedly died years earlier. Bellamy understood. Someone was stealing from the estate. Yes, for years, yes, and using dead people's names. Precisely. Lady Fane looked ill. My husband was involved. She shook her head. He wouldn't. Lord Peter looked at her. Wouldn't he? She said nothing. He may not have. Started it, Lord Peter continued, but he certainly learned how to use it. Bellamy pointed at a column of figures. What is this? Lord Peter examined it. His expression changed. That's not money. What? These are dates. He compared them with the guest book. Each payment corresponded with a date and a guest. Bellamy looked closer. The guest book was an alibi ledger. Yes. Someone could prove a person was at Belleminster when they were elsewhere, or prove they were elsewhere when they were actually here. Lady Fane whispered, "For murder." Lord Peter nodded. "Now you understand." A noise came from the corridor, the scrape of a shoe. Lord Peter extinguished the lamp. Everyone became silent. Footsteps approached. 1, 2, 3. They stopped outside the door. Bellamy raised his revolver. The handle moved. The door opened slightly. A figure entered. Tall, thin, wearing a black coat. The face was hidden beneath a hood. Lord Peter waited. The figure moved toward the table. It reached for the letters. Lord Peter switched on the lamp. "Good evening." The figure froze. Bellamy seized him. The hood fell back. It was Reverend Matthew Bell. Lady Fane gasped. Bellamy grabbed his arm. "You're under arrest." "For what?" "Murder." Bell smiled faintly. "You haven't proved anything." Lord Peter approached. "No." He picked up one of the letters. "But you have just made it considerably easier." Bell frowned. "How?" "You came for the letters." "So? You knew they existed." "Yes." "How?" "I saw them earlier." "Where?" "In Julian's study." "Impossible." "Why?" "Because I found them hidden beneath the floor." Bell smiled. "You see?" "What?" "You've made your first mistake." Lord Peter looked at him. "You've assumed I found the letters." Bell's expression changed. "I didn't." Lord Peter nodded. "Precisely." Bellamy frowned. "What are you talking about?" Lord Peter turned to him. "The letters were never beneath the floor." Bellamy stared. "Then where?" Lord Peter pointed toward Reverend Bell. "He brought them here." Bell's face went rigid. "You're lying." "No." Lord Peter's voice became almost conversational. "You've been using the underground room for years." "No." "You knew the passages." "No." "You knew the guest book." "No." "You knew about the false identities." "No." Lord Peter smiled. "And yet you knew exactly where to find the letters." Bell fell silent. Lord Peter continued. "You also knew about Arthur Bell." Bell's jaw tightened. "You knew about Edward Bell." Silence. "And Thomas Greaves." Bell's hands trembled. "You knew that Thomas disappeared." No answer. "And you knew where his coat was hidden." Bell suddenly lunged toward the table. Bellamy caught him. The struggle lasted only seconds. Then Bellamy forced him against the wall. Lord Peter picked up the final letter. He read the signature. Then he looked at Reverend Bell. "Your brother was never Arthur Bell." Bell stared at him. "Edward Bell was never Edward Bell." A pause. "And Thomas Greaves was never Thomas Greaves." Bell whispered. "You know nothing." Lord Peter smiled. "On the contrary." He held up the letter. "I know precisely why you killed Sir Julian." Bell went pale. "You're wrong, perhaps." Lord Peter looked toward the door. "But there is one person who can tell us." "Who?" Lord Peter's gaze moved to the darkness beyond the chamber. "Clara Wren." Everyone turned. She was standing in the doorway. Her face was calm, too calm, and in her hand was the missing guestbook page. Lord Peter looked at it, then at her. "Now," he said softly, "we can stop pretending that the dead are responsible." Clara smiled. "No, Mr. Wimsey." She lifted the page. "The dead are the only ones who have been telling the truth." Clara Wren stood in the doorway with the missing page held between two fingers. For once, Lord Peter did not smile. The room had become strangely still. Reverend Bell was pressed against the wall under Bellamy's hand. Lady Fane stood behind Lord Peter. Mrs. Valley remained near the entrance, staring at Clara as though she had suddenly become a stranger. Only the little clock on the table continued to tick. Clara looked at Lord Peter. "You wanted the truth." "I generally do." "You won't like it. My experience suggests that truth is very rarely improved by being liked." She held out the page. Lord Peter took it. It was the missing leaf from the guest book. At first glance it contained nothing extraordinary. Names, dates, brief notes in Sir Julian's neat hand. Then Lord Peter turned it over. There was writing on the back. Not a list, a confession. He read the first line. I, Julian Fane, altered the Guestbook for the first time in 1919. Lady Fane closed her eyes. Lord Peter continued. He read silently for several moments. Bellamy shifted impatiently. Well, Lord Peter looked up. It appears Sir Julian was considerably less innocent than we supposed. Lady Fane whispered. What did he confess? That the false guest records began 20 years ago. Why? Because he was concealing the disappearance of estate money. Bellamy glanced toward the ledgers. How much? Lord Peter named the amount. Bellamy gave a low whistle. And he did this alone? No. Everyone looked at Reverend Bell, but Lord Peter shook his head. Not him. Clara smiled faintly. No. She stepped into the room. Sir Julian's partner was my father. Lord Peter's eyes narrowed. John Wren. Yes. The solicitor. Yes. Dead 7 years. Yes. And therefore conveniently unavailable for questioning. Clara's smile disappeared. My father discovered that Sir Julian was stealing from the estate. He intended to expose him. What stopped him? Sir Julian threatened him. With what? With the truth. Lord Peter waited. Clara looked down. My father had forged several documents himself. Bellamy frowned. So he was involved. Eventually. Lord Peter nodded. Blackmail. Yes. Sir Julian used the evidence against him. And when your father died, Sir Julian continued, using the same system. Clara nodded. The Guestbook became his protection. Lord Peter examined the page again, and the false identities. Those came later. Why? Because one identity was no longer sufficient. Clara's gaze moved toward Reverend Bell. Edward Bell was created to receive money. Lord Peter turned toward the Reverend. Was that you? Bell said nothing. Clara answered, no. Then who? My father. Lord Peter's expression sharpened. John Wren? Yes. He created Edward Bell? Yes. Then who was Edward Bell? Clara looked at Reverend Bell. My uncle. Bell's face remained rigid. Matthew Bell. Lord Peter slowly understood. Your father and Reverend Bell's father were brothers. Yes. And Edward Bell was their younger brother. Yes. Bellamy looked bewildered. Then where does Arthur Bell come into this? Clara gave a bitter laugh. Arthur Bell never existed. Silence. Lord Peter looked toward the Guestbook. Of course. Bellamy stared. Then whose body was found 3 years ago? Clara did not answer. Lord Peter did. John Wren. Clara closed her eyes. Yes. Bellamy stepped back. Your father. He was murdered. By whom? Clara looked toward Reverend Bell. No. Lord Peter's eyes moved between them. Not Reverend Bell. No. Then who? Clara whispered. Sir Julian. Lady Fane suddenly covered her mouth. Lord Peter remained still. The signalman, he said. Clara nodded. Thomas Greaves discovered the body, and that is why he disappeared. Yes. What happened to him? Clara looked at Mrs. Vale. Mrs. Prand, Vale answered. Sir Julian paid him. Lord Peter frowned. To keep silent? Yes. But Thomas eventually returned. He changed his mind. Why? Because he discovered the second body. Lord Peter looked at the coat. His own? Mrs. Vale shook her head. No. She pointed toward Reverend Bell. Edward. The Reverend finally spoke. My brother. His voice was broken. Julian killed him too. Lord Peter looked at him. Why? Because Edward knew about the forged identities. And you. I discovered the truth afterward. Then why did you lie? Bell stared at him. Because I was afraid. Lord Peter's expression softened. For once an answer, I believe. Bellamy released his grip slightly. But you knew Sir Julian was going to die. Yes. Did you kill him? No. Did you help arrange his death? No. Then who did? Nobody answered. Lord Peter turned toward Clara. You. She did not deny it. Lady Fane stared. Clara? Yes. Why? Clara's face had become strangely peaceful. Because Sir Julian murdered my father. Lord Peter nodded. Tell us. Clara looked at the Guestbook. 3 years ago, my father confronted Sir Julian. He had found the original estate accounts. Sir Julian attacked him. With the railway spike? Yes. And Thomas Greaves witnessed it? Yes. Then Thomas hid the body? No. Lord Peter frowned. Clara continued. Thomas refused to help. Sir Julian threatened his family. Thomas disappeared. And what happened to your father's body? It was hidden beneath the hall. Lord Peter glanced toward the passage. The second body? Yes. Then whose body was found at Eastmere? Edward Bell's. And Sir Julian claimed it was Arthur Bell. Yes. Why? To create another dead identity. Lord Peter's eyes narrowed. And 3 years later you discovered everything. Yes. How? My father left records. Hidden where? In the Guestbook. Lord Peter looked down. Not the names, the dates. He nodded. Each false entry pointed to another document. Yes, the Guestbook was a cipher. Yes, and the final page identified Sir Julian as the murderer. Yes, Lord Peter studied her. Then why did you not go to the police? Clara laughed softly. Because Sir Julian had spent 20 years making sure that nobody would believe me. She pointed toward Reverend Bell. And because he had another weapon. Matthew. Yes, Lord Peter looked at the Reverend. Sir Julian threatened him with Edward's murder. Bell nodded. He said that if I spoke, he would claim I had killed my brother. Lord Peter sighed. An unpleasantly efficient man. Clara looked toward the shattered clock. Yesterday I found the final page. You knew Sir Julian would kill. I knew he intended to destroy the evidence. So you confronted him. Yes. What happened? He admitted everything. Did he attack you? Yes. You killed him. Clara looked directly at Lord Peter. Yes. Bellamy moved forward. How? Clara pointed toward the clock. The clock. Lord Peter understood. The railway spike. She nodded. I had found the spike in the cellar. You staged the clock. Yes. To create the 11:11 mystery. Yes. Lord Peter's mouth twitched. A remarkably elaborate piece of nonsense. I needed everyone to believe the murder had occurred at 11. But it happened earlier. Yes. When? 10:40. Bellamy looked startled. And Sir Julian was alive afterward. No. Then why did you need the false time? To give myself an alibi. Lord Peter shook his head. You didn't have one. I was in the house. Yes, and yet you allowed us to suspect everyone. I had to. Lord Peter looked at the Guestbook. No, you wanted us to. Clara lowered her eyes. Yes. He studied her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, You made one mistake. Clara looked up. What? You assumed I would solve the murder from the time. Her expression changed. But I solved it from the ink. She went pale. The red ink. Yes. The message on the mirror. You wrote it. Yes. But the ink came from Sir Julian's study. Clara stared. You couldn't have known that. Lord Peter smiled. Your father kept the same ink. He pointed toward the desk. You used it because you thought it would be invisible in the candlelight. Clara said nothing. And the final error, he continued, was the Guestbook itself. What error? You added Edward Fane's name. Clara looked confused. Why? To frighten us? No. Lord Peter shook his head. To tell us something. She remained silent. You wanted us to discover your identity. Clara's face changed. Lord Peter continued. You knew the Guestbook would lead us to the old accounts. You knew the accounts would lead us to your father. And you knew the truth would eventually lead to Sir Julian. He paused. But you did not intend to escape. Clara whispered. No, you intended to be caught. She looked at him. Why? Because you wanted someone else to say aloud that your father had been murdered. Her eyes filled with tears. Yes. Lord Peter nodded. Then your purpose is accomplished. Bellamy stepped toward her. Clara did not resist. As he placed the handcuffs around her wrists, she looked once more at the Guestbook. My father died believing nobody would know. Lord Peter answered quietly. People are rarely as forgotten as they imagine. She was led away. Reverend Bell remained motionless. Mrs. Bailey stood beside him. Lady Fane went to the window. The rain had stopped. Morning light had begun to enter the hall. Lord Peter walked to the grandfather clock. He opened its broken case. Inside, hidden behind the mechanism, was the railway spike. He removed it. On its metal surface was a small dark stain, the final physical proof. He looked at Bellamy. The clock was never supernatural. Bellamy sighed. I had not seriously considered ghosts. You considered them for approximately 6 minutes. I considered them for 4. Progress? Bellamy looked toward the empty staircase and the missing name. Lord Peter closed the clock. That was the whole point. Which name? He smiled. The name of the person who had been erased from the story. John Wren. Yes, but Clara added Edward Fane. Because she needed us to keep looking. Bellamy nodded slowly. Then he frowned. There's still one thing I don't understand. What? Why did Sir Julian keep the Guestbook? Lord Peter looked toward the old book. Because he believed records gave him control over the past. And did they? No. Lord Peter picked up his hat. Records merely give the past a longer memory. They walked toward the front door. Outside, the clouds were breaking. Bellamy paused. You're leaving already? My dear Bellamy, the murder has been solved. The murderer has confessed. The innocent have acquired considerably more complicated lives, and the breakfast has almost certainly gone cold. You make it sound terribly ordinary. Murder usually is. He stepped onto the gravel, then stopped. Bellamy looked at him. What now? Lord Peter glanced back at Belleminster Hall. The house will survive. After all this? Of course. He smiled. Houses have no conscience. They are therefore remarkably good at keeping secrets. Bellamy laughed. Lord Peter walked toward the waiting motor car. Behind him, the great doors of Belminster Hall closed. The Guestbook remained on the library table. Its pages were stained, torn, rewritten, and falsified. But on the final page, beneath all the invented names, there was now a single truthful entry. John Wren, murdered, and beneath it, in a different hand, remembered. Lord Peter never discovered who had written the last word. He suspected Clara, but he did not ask. There are some questions whose answers add nothing to justice, and as the motor car disappeared along the wet country road, he settled back, lit a cigarette, and remarked to Bellamy, Human beings, Inspector, are dreadful historians. Bellamy smiled. And detectives. Lord Peter watched the grey fields passing beyond the window. Detectives merely persuade them to improve their footnotes.